Have you ever wondered how epic fantasy worlds are visually born in maps? Every great adventure begins with a single line drawn carefully by hand. Fantasy maps are not just drawings, they are living storytelling devices indeed. Imagine holding a world in your hands before story even begins, unfolds there. Today, you will learn secrets behind crafting unforgettable fantasy maps, step-by-step guide. These techniques will transform simple sketches into legendary imaginary landscapes easily with practice. Every map tells a hidden story waiting to be discovered by readers. Let us explore how imagination shapes entire worlds on parchment paper sheets. Fantasy cartography blends art storytelling and geography into magical harmony, beautifully done. Your journey into map creation starts with imagination and curiosity. Today begins. Even the smallest island can hold the greatest untold secrets within it. Mountains, rivers, and forests guide heroes through unknown dangerous lands ahead journey. Color choices influence mood and depth within fantasy map design greatly so. Old parchment textures make maps feel ancient and historically authentic, visually appealing. Borders define kingdoms while shaping political tension and conflict between fantasy realms. Every river drawn influences trade routes and storytelling direction in powerful ways. Symbols and icons communicate dangers like dragons and hidden ruins clearly marked. Fantasy maps require balance between realism and creative imagination, carefully maintained structure. Lighting effects can make regions appear mysterious or inviting in visual storytelling. Different cultures inspire unique architectural styles within fantasy worlds' richly detailed settings. Compass roses add direction and aesthetic beauty to maps very effectively indeed. Scale determines how vast or compact your fantasy world feels to viewers. Sketching rough outlines helps organize complex world structures early in development stage. Digital tools enhance precision and flexibility in modern map making, greatly improving workflow. Hand-drawn maps carry personal artistic charm and uniqueness, always admired indeed. Every coastline can hint at hidden mysteries beneath waves' deep ocean secrets. Fantasy deserts often hide ancient ruins and forgotten civilizations beneath shifting sands. Forests in maps symbolize danger, mystery, and untamed wilderness, deep storytelling value. Rivers act as natural guides for travelers and explorers through dangerous lands. Volcanoes bring dramatic energy and danger to fantasy landscapes, instantly creating tension. Mountains often represent challenges and barriers for heroes on their epic journeys ahead. Hidden symbols can reveal secret paths and ancient knowledge within mysterious maps. Fantasy cities should feel alive with culture and activity. Rich storytelling detail. Rough drafts help refine composition before final map design during creative process. Ink and pen techniques define traditional fantasy cartography style, beautifully executed work. Layering elements improves depth and visual storytelling quality in fantasy map design. Fantasy oceans can symbolize vast unknown possibilities ahead, beyond explored regions endlessly. Every map border tells story of political conflict and unity in fictional realms. Fantasy cartography combines imagination, geography, and storytelling skills into immersive worlds together. Drafting tools significantly improve accuracy in map creation process for better results. Fantasy maps often guide readers through complex narrative journeys with immersive detail. Hidden caves can serve as gateways to secret adventures within magical realms. Symbol consistency ensures maps remain readable and visually appealing for all viewers. Fantasy maps evolve through multiple stages of creative refinement over time process. Ink shading adds depth and realism to fantasy terrain's beautiful artistic touch. Each compass direction can influence story progression significantly in narrative mapping decisions. Fantasy mapmaking requires patience, creativity, and careful observation for best outcomes, always. Every legend on map can hint at deeper lore and mystery buildup. Fantasy maps connect geography with emotional storytelling elements for deeper immersion experiences. Designing rivers carefully improves overall world realism greatly in fantasy maps always. Fantasy islands often inspire entire story arcs and legends in creative writing. Map scale adjustments help control storytelling pacing effectively for better narratives flow. Fantasy mountains often hide ancient civilizations and treasures deep within them always. Your fantasy map is telling a story before your readers even turn the first page. And most beginners completely miss this. Every mountain range you draw represents ancient history. Every river naturally guides your explorer through dangerous territories. Think of each region as a living, breathing world with its own story. Tolkien designed Middle-earth's maps before writing a single word of his stories. Mountains become natural barriers between civilizations. Trade routes explain how your cultures interact and evolve over time. Even empty spaces suggest unexplored mystery and adventure ahead. Every line you draw should ask, what story is this telling? Start your own fantasy map today and let every detail tell a story. Everything you learned so far changes when you understand maps control stories. Most beginners believe maps illustrate stories, but actually, they shape them first. This is the hidden truth experienced fantasy creators rarely explain openly. Your map is not decoration, it is the foundation of narrative destiny. Every mountain placement silently decides where heroes will struggle or triumph. Every river line secretly dictates where civilizations will rise or collapse. Suddenly you realize map-making is actually a form of storytelling control. This perspective completely transforms how you approach fantasy world creation forever. Instead of drawing land, you are designing emotional journeys for readers. The twist is that geography becomes character, not just background scenery. Imagine removing a mountain range and watching entire storylines collapse instantly. That is how powerful geography becomes when treated as narrative structure. Many great fantasy worlds begin with geography-based conflicts rather than characters. Political wars often exist because natural terrain forces separation or scarcity. Fantasy deserts are not random. They create tension and survival struggles. Frozen lands often symbolize isolation, mystery, and forgotten ancient civilizations waiting. Forests become emotional symbols of fear, growth, or spiritual transformation journeys. When you design terrain carefully, story ideas emerge naturally from it. This is where fantasy world building becomes unexpectedly intuitive and deeply powerful. You are no longer just an artist, but a narrative architect. Here is another twist most creators completely overlook during map design. Negative space on maps is just as important as filled regions. Empty areas suggest unexplored mysteries that fuel reader imagination endlessly forward. Silence on a map can feel more powerful than detailed locations. Leaving space allows future stories to expand naturally within your world. Great fantasy maps often hint at unknown regions without revealing everything. Mystery becomes a tool, not an accident in professional world-building practice. Even borders between kingdoms can imply political tension and hidden conflict. Lines on paper can represent centuries of war and negotiation history. Suddenly, your map becomes layered with invisible emotional storytelling depth. Another deeper insight is that perspective changes how maps are interpreted. A hero sees hope, but villains see opportunity and conquest routes. One map can contain multiple conflicting interpretations, depending on viewpoint. This adds richness and realism to your fantasy world design approach. Geography becomes subjective depending on culture, belief, and historical memory. A sacred mountain for one kingdom may be forbidden territory for another. Rivers might represent life for some and invasion paths for others. This dual meaning adds complexity that makes fantasy worlds unforgettable. Your map is no longer static, but emotionally and politically dynamic. It reflects perception, not just physical geography alone anymore. Now consider how time changes your fantasy map, meaning over centuries. Ancient ruins may become modern cities or disappear into forgotten legends. Coastlines may shift, kingdoms may rise, and empires may collapse completely. A good fantasy map should feel alive across historical timelines naturally. This temporal depth adds realism and emotional weight to your world. You are essentially designing history, not just geography on paper. That realization separates amateur maps from truly professional fantasy creations. Every decision echoes through time like ripples across imagined civilizations. This is where creativity meets logic in perfect world-building balance. And your fantasy map starts feeling like a living historical document. At this point, you begin seeing maps differently than ever before. You notice hidden storytelling potential in every curve and symbol drawn. Even simple lines start carrying emotional and narrative significance instinctively. The deeper you go, the more your imagination expands beyond limits. Fantasy cartography becomes not a skill, but a mindset shift entirely. You are building worlds that think, breathe, and evolve over time. And this transformation is what makes fantasy maps truly unforgettable creations. Now, everything prepares you for final stage of powerful world presentation. In next part, we turn this knowledge into complete creative mastery. Your fantasy world is now ready for its final evolution step. Now we transform raw ideas into a polished and visually powerful fantasy map. Every detail you add now must serve clarity, emotion, and storytelling purpose. This stage is where imagination becomes structured art with professional creative discipline. Start refining coastlines so they feel natural, flowing, and geographically believable. Smooth transitions between land and water create stronger immersion for viewers instantly. Adjust mountain ranges so they guide attention toward important narrative regions. Balance visual density so no part of your map feels overwhelming. A great fantasy map always leads the eye through meaningful pathways. Use contrast carefully to highlight kingdoms, borders, and major geographical landmarks clearly. Now is the time to add final symbolic details and cultural markers. Symbols should feel consistent, meaningful, and deeply connected to your world's identity. Avoid clutter by removing unnecessary decorative elements that distract from storytelling clarity. Every icon must communicate something important about the world or its history. Refinement is not about adding more, but about choosing wisely what remains. Think like a storyteller editing a novel for emotional impact and precision. Now review how each region connects logically with neighboring territories overall. Geography should always feel cohesive, believable, and naturally interconnected across regions. If something feels off, adjust it until it fits world logic perfectly. This is where patience turns good maps into extraordinary fantasy masterpieces. Every correction strengthens the illusion of a real living world. Next, focus on texture to enhance depth and artistic atmosphere visually. Light shading can create mountains that feel massive and powerful instantly. Soft gradients in oceans can suggest depth, danger, and hidden mysteries below. Old parchment effects can give your map historical authenticity, and timeless feeling. These visual layers help your audience emotionally connect with your world. Now step back and evaluate your map as a complete narrative system. Ask yourself whether each region inspires curiosity, tension, or emotional response. A strong fantasy map always invites exploration without saying a single word. If something feels boring, rework it until it sparks imagination again. Great world builders constantly revise until every corner feels meaningful and alive. Now, imagine your map displayed at the beginning of an epic story. Readers should instantly feel excitement, mystery, and anticipation for adventure ahead. That emotional reaction is the true goal of fantasy cartography mastery. You are not just drawing land, you are building emotional experiences. Every stroke of your pen contributes to reader immersion and storytelling depth. At this level, your map becomes indistinguishable from professional fantasy works. Consistency, patience, and imagination are your most powerful tools now combined. The difference between average and epic maps lies in thoughtful refinement. Never rush this stage, because mastery is built through careful iteration. Every adjustment brings your world closer to legendary storytelling quality. Now your fantasy map should feel complete, immersive, and emotionally resonant. But perfection is never final in true creative world-building processes. Even finished maps can evolve as stories and ideas expand further. Great creators always revisit and improve their worlds over time continuously. This mindset ensures your fantasy universe stays dynamic and endlessly inspiring. Your map is now ready to become foundation of powerful storytelling. It can guide novels, games, or entire fictional universes forward. Every viewer should feel drawn into your world instantly upon viewing. That is the true sign of successful fantasy map creation mastery. And now you stand at the edge of full creative control. You understand how geography shapes narrative, emotion, and world identity deeply. You know how detail, balance, and symbolism create immersive fantasy experiences. You can now design maps that feel alive, meaningful, and unforgettable. This knowledge separates casual sketchers from true world-building artists forever. The power of fantasy cartography now belongs fully in your hands, and every map you create will carry your unique creative signature. Your imagination has become a tool for building entire fictional realities. Now, it is time to use that power with confidence and vision. In final part, we will conclude with action and inspiration forward. You're Joe. Now everything comes together as your fantasy map becomes a complete world. You are no longer just drawing. You are creating entire realities. Every line you draw now carries meaning, emotion, and storytelling power. This is where imagination transforms into something truly unforgettable and lasting. Your map is not just paper. It is a gateway to adventure. Anyone who looks at it should feel pulled into another universe instantly. That emotional pull is the ultimate success of fantasy map creation. You have learned how geography, story, and emotion connect seamlessly together. You now understand how terrain shapes destiny, conflict, and exploration path. And you know how silence on a map creates powerful mystery. But mastery is not just knowledge, it is constant creative practice. Every new map you create will sharpen your artistic storytelling instincts. Small improvements over time lead to extraordinary world-building results eventually. Never underestimate the power of experimentation and bold imagination in design. The best fantasy worlds were not built in a single attempt. They were refined, reimagined, and rebuilt again and again patiently. Your journey is exactly the same as those legendary creators before you. Every mistake you make becomes a stepping stone toward mastery growth. Every sketch you draw adds depth to your creative identity. And every map brings you closer to building unforgettable fictional universes. Now think about the worlds you still have not created yet. Entire kingdoms, histories, and legends are waiting inside your imagination right now. Fantasy cartography gives you the power to bring them into existence. You are shaping places where heroes will rise and legends will fall. You're designing the very stage where epic stories will unfold. This responsibility is also an incredible creative freedom and opportunity. Few skills allow you to combine art, logic, and storytelling so perfectly. That is what makes fantasy map creation truly powerful and timeless craft. You now hold the ability to turn imagination into structured reality, and that ability will only grow stronger with continued practice. So take your next blank page without hesitation or fear. Start drawing not just land, but meaning, emotion, and narrative depth. Let every river guide a story, every mountain hold a secret. Let every empty space whisper mystery waiting to be discovered. Trust your imagination more than perfection in your first attempts, because every great fantasy world begins with imperfect but brave creativity. Your next map could become the foundation of an entire universe. It could inspire stories, games, or worlds others will explore. And it all starts with a single confident, creative decision from you. That is the real magic behind fantasy mapmaking mastery. Remember, the world you imagine is only limited by your courage. There are no boundaries except the ones you choose to draw. Every creator begins exactly where you are standing right now. The difference is simply consistency, curiosity, and creative persistence over time. Keep refining, keep imagining, and keep building worlds without limits. Your fantasy maps will evolve as your imagination continues to grow. And each new creation will reflect a stronger version of your vision. One day, others will study the worlds you have designed with admiration. But today is where your journey truly begins in full strength. This is your moment to create something unforgettable and timeless. So take what you have learned and bring your first epic world to life. Let your maps tell stories that words alone could never express fully. Build lands that feel real, emotional, and endlessly explorable by imagination. And never stop pushing the boundaries of what your creativity can achieve. Because fantasy worlds are only as limited as the mind that creates them. Now go beyond limits and design something truly extraordinary and powerful. Your imagination is ready, your skills are built, your vision is clear. All that remains is action, creation, and fearless artistic exploration forward. Start now, and let your fantasy world finally come alive completely. The world you create next could be your greatest masterpiece ever.